The transport ship's doors opened with a soft hiss, and Jiho Kim stepped onto the docking platform of Theta 7 station. His single bag hung over his shoulder as he looked around at the massive space station that would be his home for the next 2 years. The Galactic Academy of Advanced Sciences was the most famous school in known space, and somehow he had gotten accepted. Jiho was 19 years old, with black hair and quiet eyes that seemed to notice everything. He wore simple clothes from Earth, jeans and a plain shirt that made him look ordinary, but ordinary was the last thing anyone would call a human in this part of the galaxy. As he walked through the station corridors, other beings stopped to stare. Some whispered to each other in languages he didn't understand. Others quickly moved away when they saw him coming. Jiho had expected this reaction. Humans were rare out here, and their reputation made most aliens nervous. The station was beautiful. Massive windows showed the stars outside, and the corridors were wide enough for beings of all sizes. He passed a group of Zephyrians, their crystal bodies catching the light like living diamonds. A few insect-like Chitauri clicked their mandibles as they walked by on 6 legs. Near the central hub, a nebulite floated past, its gaseous form contained, in a special suit that let it interact with solid matter. Jiho found his way to the student registration office. Behind the desk sat a being he didn't recognize, tall, with blue skin and 4 arms. The being looked up from its computer screen and froze when it saw him. "You must be the human," the being said in accented but clear Standard Galactic. "Jiho, Kim from Earth, correct?" "That's right," Jiho replied with a small smile. "I'm here for the xenobiology program." The registrar's 4 hands moved quickly across different keyboards. Yes, here you are. Everything seems to be in order." It paused, studying Jiho carefully. "This is your first time off Earth?" "First time off my home continent, actually," Jiho said. "I grew up in a small city. This is all pretty amazing." The registrar handed him a data pad with his schedule and room assignment. "Your dormitory is in Section C. Your roommate is, let me see, Kyung Park, another human. That should make things easier for both of you." Jiho thanked the registrar and made his way to the dormitory. The corridors here were quieter, with doors marked in various alien scripts alongside Standard Galactic. He found his room and pressed his hand to the scanner. The door slid open to reveal a space designed for human occupants. Normal gravity, breathable atmosphere, and furniture sized for bipedal beings. His roommate was already there, unpacking clothes into a closet. Kyung Park was a few years older than Jiho, with the confident air of someone who had been away from home before. He looked up when Jiho entered. "You must be my roommate," Kyung said in Korean, then switched to Standard Galactic. "I'm Kyung Park, linguistics major." "You?" "Jiho Kim, xenobiology," Jiho replied, also in Standard Galactic. "It would be good practice." "Nice to meet you." "Same here. Fair warning, most of the other students are pretty scared of us. Humans don't have the best reputation out here." Jiho set his bag on his bed. "What kind of reputation?" Kyung laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "We're classified as Class 3 Deathworlders. Most aliens come from what they call garden worlds. Planets where the worst predator might be something like a rabbit. Then there's Earth, where everything wants to kill you and the weather changes every few minutes." "I never thought of Earth as particularly dangerous," Jiho said. "That's because you grew up there. Out here, most beings evolved on planets where the biggest challenge was finding enough sunlight or the right minerals to eat. They didn't have to worry about tigers or hurricanes or poisonous snakes. The fact that humans survived and became intelligent on a planet like Earth makes us seem like monsters to them." That evening, Jiho attended his first class, Introduction to Galactic Biology. The lecture hall was huge, with seats designed for dozens of different body types. He found a human-sized chair near the back and sat down. The other students filed in, and Jiho noticed how they reacted when they saw him. A crystalline Zephyrian named Velthari, chose a seat several rows away, her faceted body reflecting the room's lights. A small group of Chitauri clustered together on the opposite side, their compound eyes tracking his movements. A gaseous nebulite, called Rune, floated near the ceiling, as far from the solid students as possible. Professor Kellamore entered, a tall, thin being with gray skin and large black eyes. He belonged to a species Jiho didn't recognize, but his reputation was well known. Kellamore had written several of the textbooks they would be using. "Welcome to Introduction to Galactic Biology," the professor began. "This semester, we will study the incredible diversity of life in our galaxy. We have students here from 12 different species, each bringing their own perspective to our discussions." His gaze swept the room and paused when it reached Jiho. "This is particularly interesting because we have a human student joining us. Humans offer a unique viewpoint, having evolved on what we classify as a death world, a planet with extreme conditions that produced very resilient life forms." Some students shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Jiho kept his expression neutral, but he could feel everyone watching him. After class, as students filed out, a few approached him cautiously. Velthari was the first. "You're the human," she said, her voice like wind chimes. "I'm Velthari. I've never met a human before." "Jiho," he replied. "Nice to meet you. Is it true that your planet has creatures that hunt other creatures for food?" asked Mox, one of the Chitauri. His species were herbivores, and the concept of predation clearly disturbed him. "Some do, yes," Jiho said carefully, "but so do many. Other planets. It's just one way life can develop." "But your species hunted too, didn't you?" "This came from Korvac, a reptilian saurid. His people were among the few aliens who understood predation, though even they found human hunting methods extreme. In the past, yes. Now we mostly grow our food." Jiho could see this wasn't the answer they expected. They seemed to want confirmation that humans were the dangerous monsters their databases described. Over the following weeks, Jiho settled into academy life. He was a good student, always willing to help others with their work. He studied hard and asked thoughtful questions in class. Slowly, some of his classmates began to relax around him, but Jiho could tell they were still afraid. They watched him carefully when they thought he wasn't looking. They spoke in whispers when he entered a room. Even when they were friendly, there was always a distance, a careful politeness that reminded him he was different. He didn't blame them. He had read the files on human history that the galactic databases contained. Wars, violence, and destruction dominated the records. What they didn't show was the other side, the art, music, and literature. The capacity for kindness and sacrifice. The choice to build rather than destroy. Maybe someday they would understand that humans were more than their reputation suggested. Until then, Jiho would continue being himself. Quiet, helpful, and harmless. He had no idea how soon that perception would be tested. 3 weeks into the semester, Jiho had fallen into a comfortable routine. His xenobiology classes were fascinating, and despite their initial fear, several classmates had warmed up to him. Velthari often asked him questions about Earth's ecosystems, while Mox shared stories about the peaceful farming communes of his homeworld. The morning started like any other. Jiho grabbed breakfast in the cafeteria, synthetic protein that tasted almost like the rice bowls his mother used to make. Kyung was already at their usual table, reviewing notes for his linguistics exam. "Sleep well?" Kyung asked in Korean as Jiho sat down. "Well enough. You?" "Kept dreaming about verb conjugations in Zephyrian. I think I'm studying too much." Kyung rubbed his eyes. "How's the biology program going?" "Good. Professor Kellamore assigned us to research partnerships with students from different species. I'm working with Velthari on comparative respiratory systems." "That's progress. A month ago, she wouldn't sit in the same row as you." Jiho nodded. It was true. Most of his classmates no longer seemed actively afraid of him, though they still kept their distance. He understood why. The galactic databases painted humans as violent predators from a nightmare world. It would take time to overcome that reputation. They finished breakfast and headed to their respective classes. Jiho's first period was Advanced Xenobiology with Professor Kellamore, held in one of the larger lecture halls. The room could accommodate students of all sizes and atmospheric requirements, with environmental controls for each seating area. Jiho took his usual seat in the middle section. Velthari had saved the seat next to her, something that would have been unthinkable when classes started. Her crystalline form sparkled in the overhead lighting as she organized her notes. "Ready for today's lecture on symbiotic relationships?" she asked, her voice carrying the musical quality of her species. "Looking forward to it," Jiho replied. The reading about the fungal networks on Kepler 438b was incredible. Other students filed in around them. Mox and his Chitauri friend, Rizk, took seats in the section designed for insectoid beings. Rune floated near the ceiling in his environmental suit, tendrils of controlled gas swirling within the transparent container. Korvac settled into one of the larger chairs, his reptilian bulk requiring extra space. Professor Kellamore entered right, on time, his gray skin pale under the classroom lights. He moved to the central platform and activated the holographic display system. "Today, we will examine one of the most fascinating aspects of biology, the ways different species depend on each other for survival," he began. "Symbiosis takes many forms, from the obvious partnerships we can observe to the subtle chemical exchanges that—" An alarm cut through his words. Not the gentle chime used for class changes, but a harsh, urgent sound that made everyone freeze. Red emergency lights began flashing throughout the room. Professor Kellamore's large black eyes widened. He moved quickly to his desk terminal and pressed several keys. His expression grew grave as information flowed across his screen. "Attention, students." His voice was calm but serious. "We are now under Code Black protocols. This means the station is experiencing a security breach of the highest level. All classroom doors will be sealed, and no one may leave until the situation is resolved." Heavy metallic barriers slid down over the windows with a loud clang. Additional locks engaged on the classroom door with multiple clicking sounds. The normal lighting dimmed, replaced by the red emergency illumination. Velthari's crystalline form began to vibrate with anxiety, creating a soft, ringing sound. "What's code?" "Black," she whispered to Jiho. "I don't know," he replied, but something cold was forming in his stomach. He had heard that term before, during his pre-departure briefing on Earth. Code Black meant active hostile forces on the station. Mox and Rizk were clicking rapidly in their own language, their compound eyes darting toward every possible exit. Rune had compressed himself into a tight ball of gas, his species' defensive response to danger. Korvac remained still, but Jiho could see the tension in his muscular frame. Professor Kellamore continued reading his terminal. "According to security reports, unknown vessels have docked with the station. Armed individuals have been detected in multiple sections. All students and faculty are to remain in secure locations until further notice." "Armed individuals?" Velthari's voice rose in pitch. "Who would attack the academy?" Before the professor could answer, the room's communication system crackled to life. A harsh, mechanical voice filled the space. "Citizens of Theta 7 Station, do not be alarmed. We are the Shadow Collective, and we are here on business. Comply with our instructions, and no one will be harmed unnecessarily." Several students gasped. Even Jiho felt a chill at the name. The Shadow Collective was legendary, a group of elite assassins who took contracts throughout the galaxy. They were known for their efficiency and their complete lack of mercy. "We seek Ambassador Thalvar of the Centauri Republic," the voice continued. "More specifically, we seek his offspring, who is currently enrolled at this academy. Surrender the target willingly, and our business here will be concluded quickly." Jiho's gaze swept the classroom and found who the voice was talking about. In the far corner sat Lyra, a quiet Centauri girl with pale blue skin and large, frightened eyes. She was Ambassador Thalvar's daughter, though she rarely spoke about her family's political position. Next to her, Minho Choi, a human exchange student from the linguistics program, had gone completely pale. Minho was dating Lyra, something that had caused quite a stir among both species due to the rarity of human-alien relationships. "They can't be serious," Professor Kelmore muttered, his hands shaking as he worked at his terminal. "The Academy has the finest security systems in the galaxy. How did they even get aboard?" Through the sealed windows, they could hear sounds from the corridors, heavy footsteps, the hum of energy weapons, and occasional shouts in languages Jiho didn't recognize. The Shadow Collective was moving through the station methodically, checking. Each section, Lyra was trembling, her natural Centauri pallor making her look almost transparent. Minho had moved closer to her, taking her hand in both of his. His people were pacifists by nature, but Jiho could see he was prepared to try protecting her, despite having no idea how. "Maybe security will stop them," Velthari said hopefully. "The Academy guards are well trained." As if in response to her words, the sound of weapons fire echoed through the walls. It was brief and one-sided. Then silence returned, more ominous than the noise had been. Professor Kelmore's terminal chimed with an incoming message. His face went even paler as he read it. "The Security Center reports that primary defenses have been neutralized," he announced quietly. "The intruders are moving through the academic sections systematically." "How long before they reach us?" Korvac asked. His reptilian species understood warfare better than most others in the room. "Based on their current progress." Professor Kelmore's voice trailed off as he calculated. "Perhaps 20 minutes. Maybe less." Lyra made a small sound of despair. Minho squeezed her hands tighter. "There has to be something we can do," Rizek chittered. "Some way to hide her or get her out of here." "The room is sealed," Professor Kelmore replied. "Emergency protocols prevent anyone from leaving or entering until the threat is neutralized." Jiho found himself studying the classroom with new eyes. Emergency protocols were designed to protect students by keeping them secure, but they also created a trap. Once the Shadow Collective reached this room, there would be nowhere to run. He looked at his classmates, beings from peaceful worlds who had never faced real violence. Their fear was overwhelming their ability to think clearly. Even Professor Kelmore, despite his calm exterior, was clearly out of his depth. The sounds in the corridor were getting closer. Heavy boots on metal floors, the whine of scanner equipment. Occasionally, a door would slide open somewhere nearby, followed by muffled voices and then the door closing again. They were searching every room, being thorough. Professional Jiho closed his eyes and tried to think. In 20 minutes or less, the most dangerous assassins in the galaxy would walk through that door. They would be armed, trained, and completely ruthless. His classmates would be helpless against them. But Jiho wasn't like his classmates. He came from Earth, where survival meant something different, where being peaceful was a choice, not an inability. He opened his eyes and began to assess the classroom more carefully, not as a place of learning, but as a potential battlefield. Takru, Shadow Collective, was about to learn something that wasn't in their intelligence files about humans. Some lessons could only be taught in person. The sounds in the corridor grew closer. Jiho could hear scanner beeps as the Shadow Collective checked each room methodically. Door seals hissed open and closed. Voices spoke in clipped, professional tones. 15 minutes, maybe less, Professor, Kellamore whispered, watching his terminal for updates from station security. In the corner, Lyra was barely holding back tears. Minho kept his arms around her, but his own hands were shaking. The other students huddled together, their various forms of anxiety on full display. Velthari's crystalline body was vibrating so rapidly she was creating a constant high-pitched hum. The Chitauri students had pressed themselves against the far wall, their compound eyes fixed on the sealed door. Jiho remained in his seat, but his posture had changed. He sat straighter, his head tilted slightly as he listened to the sounds outside. His classmates might not notice the difference, but someone with training would recognize it, the way a predator focuses when it senses danger approaching. "There has to be something we can do," Minho said desperately. "Some way to protect her." "The room is sealed," Professor Kelmore repeated. "We can't leave, and no one can enter without proper authorization codes." "The Shadow Collective doesn't need authorization codes," Korvac growled. His reptilian species had more experience with violence than most others present. "They have equipment that can cut through these barriers like paper." As if to prove his point, they heard the distinctive sound of plasma cutters starting up somewhere, nearby. The Shadow Collective wasn't bothering with doors anymore. They were making their own entrances. "How do they even know Lyra is here?" Velthari asked, her voice chiming with fear. "Student records," Professor Kelmore said grimly. "If they accessed the station's computer systems, they would have complete class schedules and seating arrangements." Jiho stood up slowly and walked to the front of the classroom. His movement was fluid, quiet despite the emergency lighting that made everyone else seem clumsy. He examined the sealed barriers over the windows, running his fingers along the edges. "What are you doing?" Professor Kelmore asked. "Looking," Jiho replied simply. He moved to the door next, studying the emergency locks that kept them trapped inside. "The barriers are reinforced titanium steel composite," the professor said. "Even if we could break them, we're 3 levels up from the nearest emergency exit." Jiho nodded but continued his examination. He walked the perimeter of the room, his eyes taking in details that seemed meaningless to the others. The position of the environmental control vents, the spacing between support beams, the way the emergency lighting created shadows and blind spots. "You're from Earth," Korvac said suddenly, watching Jiho's systematic survey. "Your people understand warfare. Is there anything—" "I'm a xenobiology student," Jiho replied mildly. "I study how different species adapt to their environments." But his tone had changed slightly. The others might not notice, but there was something different in his voice. Something that made the temperature in the room seem to drop by a few degrees. The plasma-cutting sounds were getting closer. 2 rooms away, maybe 3. They could hear voices more clearly now. Harsh, clipped commands in a language none of them recognized except Jiho. He had studied military dialects as part of his pre-departure training. "Move faster. The target is in classroom C7. Scanning. Shows multiple heat signatures." The information was accurate. "Prepare breach charges for the security door." Jiho translated mentally but didn't share the information. It would only increase the panic. Minho helped Lyra to her feet. "Maybe if I go to them first," he said desperately. "If I explain that she's just a student, not involved in politics." "Minho, no," Lyra whispered. "They'll kill you." "The Shadow Collective doesn't negotiate," Korvac said bluntly. "They have a contract, and they complete it. That's why they're feared across the galaxy." Jiho returned to his seat but didn't sit down. Instead, he removed his jacket and folded it neatly, placing it on the chair. Underneath, he wore a simple black t-shirt that revealed arms that were more muscular than his loose clothing had suggested. "What are you doing?" Velthari asked. "Getting comfortable," Jiho replied. But his eyes never stopped moving, tracking every detail of the room's layout. The plasma cutting stopped. They were right outside now. Heavy footsteps approached their door. Scanner beeps indicated the Shadow Collective was analyzing the room's contents and occupants. Through the sealed barrier, they could hear muffled voices. "Confirmed. Target is inside with approximately 12 other beings. Species composition? Mixed. Standard Academy population. 1 additional human besides the target's companion. Irrelevant. Breach insecure." There was a loud thunk as something attached to their door. Professor Kellemore's terminal flashed warnings about the integrity of the entrance being compromised. Breach, charges set. Clear the area. The explosion wasn't large, but it was precisely placed. The emergency locks shattered, and the door slid open with a grinding sound of damaged mechanisms. Smoke filled the entrance. Through the smoke came the Shadow Collective. The first figure through the door was clearly the leader. He stood nearly 7 feet tall, his body a mixture of biological and mechanical parts. 6 arms extended from his torso, each ending in a different weapon designed to kill specific alien physiologies. His head was mostly cybernetic, with multiple eyes that could see across various spectrums. Behind him came 4 more assassins, each specialized for different combat roles. Their equipment was military grade, their movements coordinated with the precision of a unit that had worked together for years. The leader's multiple eyes swept the room, instantly cataloging each occupant and assessing threat levels. His targeting systems identified species, calculated vulnerabilities, and assigned kill priorities. When his gaze passed over Jiho, there was barely a pause. Human male, young, no visible weapons, minimal threat rating. I am Nextar of the Shadow. Collective. His voice was mechanically enhanced, but still carried the cold authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. We are here for Ambassador Thalvar's offspring. Identify yourself, and the others will be permitted to live. The classroom fell silent except for the quiet sobs of some students. Even Professor Kellemore seemed frozen by the presence of beings designed purely for killing. Lyra pressed herself against the wall, trying to make herself invisible. Minho stepped in front of her, his whole body trembling, but his jaw set with determination. She's just a student, Minho said, his voice cracking. She has nothing to do with her father's politics. Nextar's mechanical head turned toward him with servo-motor precision. Human! Centauri Republic records indicate you are involved with the target. This makes you a secondary objective. One of his weapon arms raised, a pulse rifle designed specifically to penetrate human bone structure. Step aside or die with her. Minho didn't move. His knees were shaking, and tears ran down his face, but he stayed between the assassins and Lyra. Nextar's targeting system locked onto Minho's center mass. His finger tightened on the trigger. Stop. The word came from across the room, spoken, quietly but with such absolute certainty that everyone turned to look. Jiho hadn't moved from beside his chair, but something about his posture had changed completely. He stood perfectly still, but there was a coiled tension in his frame that hadn't been there before. His breathing had slowed. His eyes, which had always seemed kind and gentle, now held something that made even Nextar pause. Did you just give me an order, human? Nextar's multiple weapon systems turned toward this unexpected interruption. Jiho looked directly at the cybernetic killer, showing no fear of the weapons pointed at him. I made a suggestion, he said in the same quiet tone. You might want to reconsider your approach here. The other assassins shifted, their own weapons tracking toward this new source of resistance. Their equipment registered elevated stress, hormones from all the other occupants, but the human showed no signs of fear response. Nextar laughed, a sound like grinding metal. A human student thinks to challenge the Shadow Collective? I have killed dozens of your kind across the galaxy. Jiho's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Something old and predatory that had nothing to do with civilization or education. No, he said simply. You've killed humans who were trying to be civilized. The distinction meant nothing to the aliens in the room. They didn't understand why Nextar's targeting system suddenly registered a shift in the human's threat assessment. But Jiho's classmates would learn soon enough what that distinction meant. What happened when a human stopped choosing to be peaceful? For a moment, the classroom existed in perfect stillness. Nextar's multiple targeting systems focused on Jiho, analyzing this unexpected challenge to his authority. The other Shadow Collective members maintained their positions, but shifted their attention to this new factor in their mission parameters. Jiho remained where he stood, his breathing slow and controlled. To his classmates, he looked calm, almost relaxed. But something fundamental had changed in his bearing. The gentle student they knew was still there, but underneath it was something else. Something that had been waiting quietly for 3 weeks. You seem to misunderstand your situation, human, Nextar said, his mechanical voice carrying artificial amusement. We are the Shadow Collective. We have never failed a mission. We have eliminated targets on 17 different worlds, including dozens of your species. I understand perfectly, Jiho replied. His voice remained conversational, as if they were discussing homework assignments. You're very good at what you do, but you've made a mistake. 2 of Nextar's weapon arms turned toward him, energy cells, charging with a high-pitched whine. Enlighten me. You assumed that because I'm young and in a classroom, I'm helpless. Jiho's eyes never left Nextar's multiple optical sensors. You cataloged me as a low-threat target based on incomplete data. Human physiology is well documented. One of the other assassins spoke up, his voice filtered through a breathing apparatus. Enhanced strength and reflexes compared to most species, but nothing that poses a significant challenge to our equipment. And training, Jiho nodded as if agreeing. That's true for humans you've encountered before. Soldiers, colonists, traders, people who learned to fight after they left Earth. But you've never met someone who grew up on the home world. Professor Kelmore was watching this exchange with growing confusion. In his database, Earth was classified as a dangerous world. But Jiho had always seemed so gentle, so eager to help others with their studies. Earth made us into something specific, Jiho continued, his tone still eerily calm. Most species evolved on worlds where the primary challenges were finding food or avoiding natural disasters. We evolved on a planet where everything was actively trying to kill us, where survival meant becoming better predators than the things hunting us. Nextar's targeting computers ran rapid calculations. Human threat assessment remained within acceptable parameters. You're attempting psychological warfare. It won't work. I'm trying to give you a chance to walk away, Jiho said simply. Because once this starts, I can't guarantee any of you will leave this room alive. The classroom erupted in whispers of shock from his classmates. Velthari's crystalline form was vibrating so rapidly, she was creating a constant musical tone. Even Korvac, whose species understood violence better than most, looked stunned. Nextar's laugh was like breaking machinery. You threaten 5 armed professionals with your bare hands? I'm not threatening anyone. I'm explaining facts. Jiho's stance shifted slightly, weight moving to the balls of his feet. You can complete your mission and leave, or you can learn why humans are classified as Class Thuthi Deathworlders. Enough! Nexitar's patience had run out. His primary weapon arm swung toward Minho, who was still trying to shield Lyra. I'll kill the Centauri's pet human first, then deal with you. The pulse rifle fired. What happened next took less than 3 seconds, but to everyone watching, it seemed to unfold in slow motion. Jiho moved, not with enhanced technology or alien augmentation, but with the fluid, efficient motion of something that had spent millions of years learning to hunt and kill. He was already in motion before the rifle finished charging, his brain having predicted the shot based on micro-expressions in Nextar's body language. The energy blast that should have killed Minho instead struck the wall where Jiho had been, standing a heartbeat before. But Jiho wasn't dodging. He was closing distance. His first target wasn't Nextar, but the assassin to the leader's right, the one with the breathing apparatus. Jiho's shoulder struck the assassin's center mass with the full force of human muscle backed by Earth gravity conditioning. The impact lifted the assassin off his feet and sent him crashing into the wall with enough force to crack the reinforced panels. Before the others could react, Jiho had rolled behind a bank of student desks. Pulse rifle fire erupted from multiple directions, the energy beams turning furniture into scattered debris and filling the air with smoke. "Spread out!" Nextar commanded. "Triangulated fire pattern!" But Jiho was no longer where their targeting systems expected him to be. The Shadow Collective had trained to fight soldiers who used tactics they understood, cover-based combat with energy weapons and coordinated squad movements. They hadn't trained to fight something that treated the environment itself as a weapon. Jiho emerged from behind the disintegrated desks, holding a piece of twisted metal debris. He threw it not at any of the assassins, but at the environmental control panel. Sparks flew as the room's atmosphere regulation failed and emergency lighting flickered. In the brief moment of confusion, he was moving again. The second assassin went down when Jiho used the being's own weapon against him. A simple redirect of the rifle barrel caused the assassin to fire into his own foot, and while he was dealing with that injury, Jiho relieved him of both the weapon and consciousness. "Impossible," Nextar snarled, his multiple optical sensors tracking frantically. "No unaugmented human moves like that." "You're right," Jiho's voice came from somewhere in the smoke-filled chaos. "Unaugmented humans can't do this. But I'm not unaugmented." He appeared behind the third assassin, moving with the silent efficiency his ancestors had used to hunt mammoth across Ice Age plains. "I'm augmented by 4 billion years of evolutionary pressure on the most dangerous planet in known space." The third assassin spun to face him, but human reflexes honed by Earth's unforgiving environment were faster than alien technology. Jiho's hand closed on the being's weapon, twisted it away, and delivered a precise strike to what his xenobiology training had identified as the species' primary nerve cluster. Now it was just Jiho, Nextar, and the fourth assassin. The remaining assassin fired wildly, his shots going wide as panic overrode training. Jiho used the classroom's holographic projectors as both shield and weapon, the heavy equipment providing cover while the projector beams disrupted the assassin's targeting systems. "Stand down!" Nextar commanded his remaining subordinate. "I'll handle this myself." The cybernetic killer's 6 weapons arms spread wide, each weapon designed to counter a specific type of opponent. Energy shields activated around his core body. Targeting computers locked onto every possible position Jiho might occupy. "You fight well for a student," Nextar admitted, "but I am equipped to handle Class 3 Deathworlder physiology. My creators studied human combat patterns extensively." Jiho stepped out of the smoke and debris, his clothes torn but his movements still fluid and controlled. There wasn't a trace of fear in his expression, only the focused calm of a predator that had found worthy prey. "Your creators made the same mistake you did?" he said quietly. "They studied how humans fight other species. They never learned how we fight each other." For the first time since entering the classroom, Nextar's threat assessment systems registered genuine uncertainty. On Earth, humans had spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing other humans. Everything else had just been practice. Nextar's 6 weapon arms tracked Jiho's movement as the human stepped fully into view. Energy shields hummed around the cybernetic assassin's core body, and targeting computers painted multiple kill vectors across his optical display. He had faced dangerous opponents before, enhanced soldiers, alien warriors, even other Deathworlders. This should be no different. But something was wrong with his threat assessment algorithms. The human showed no signs of the stress hormones that preceded combat. His heart rate was steady, his breathing controlled. Most disturbing of all, his expression held something Nextar's psychological analysis programs couldn't categorize. Not rage or fear or desperation, but a kind of patient interest, as if Jiho were studying a particularly complex biological specimen. "You're stalling," Nextar said, his mechanical voice carrying forced confidence. "Hoping station security will arrive before I kill you." "Station security is 3 levels away dealing," With your diversion team, Jiho replied calmly. They won't get here for another 10 minutes. This is just between us. The accuracy of that assessment made Nextar's threat computers spike warnings. The human shouldn't have tactical awareness of the entire operation. You studied our methods, Nextar realized. I studied everything. Jiho began to circle slowly, his movements fluid and unhurried. Shadow Collective operational patterns, your previous missions, the psychological profiles of your team leaders. I've had 3 weeks to prepare for this possibility. Impossible. We received this contract only 2 days ago. The contract, yes. But Ambassador Thalvar has had enemies for months. His daughter attending this academy was always a vulnerability. I calculated a 63% chance someone would try to exploit it before semester's end. Nextar's multiple eyes tracked Jiho's circular path, but the human stayed just beyond optimal firing range for most of his weapons. The few that could reach him would require repositioning, creating openings in his defensive screen. You're not just a student, Nextar stated. Xenobiology major 3rd year, Jiho confirmed. But Earth doesn't send anyone off-world without certain preparations. We learned that lesson the hard way. Behind the overturned furniture, Jiho's classmates watched in stunned silence. Professor Kellamore had pulled up Jiho's academic records on his terminal, searching for some indication of military training or combat enhancement. The files showed only a quiet student from a small city, interested in alien life forms and interspecies. Cooperation. Velthari's crystalline form had stopped vibrating. She watched with the fascination of someone witnessing something that shouldn't exist, gentleness and violence existing in the same person without contradiction. Begin combat sequence, Nextar commanded his internal systems. Energy weapons, charged to full power, targeting computers locked onto Jiho's predicted movement patterns. The attack came with overwhelming force. 6 different weapons firing in coordinated sequence, designed to drive the target into a killing zone. Pulse rifles, plasma bursts, and projectile weapons created a web of destruction that should have been impossible to avoid. Jiho avoided it, not through superhuman speed or alien technology, but through something more disturbing. Prediction. He moved before the weapons fired, reading micro-expressions in Nextar's mechanical components that indicated firing decisions. His path took him through gaps in the attack pattern that existed for fractions of seconds. Impossible, Nextar snarled, recalculating firing solutions. Predictable, Jiho corrected. He had reached the wall and was using the room's architecture as cover, forcing Nextar to reposition. Your targeting systems are designed for optimal efficiency. That makes them mathematical. Mathematics can be calculated. The second attack pattern was more complex, with random elements designed to counter prediction, but Jiho wasn't trying to predict the shots anymore. He was predicting Nextar himself. When the assassin moved to gain better firing angles, Jiho was already using that movement to close distance. When Nextar raised his defensive shields, Jiho was attacking from the direction those shields couldn't cover. Every action the mechanical killer took was being used against him by something that understood tactics on a deeper level than computer. Programming. You fight like you're reading my mind, Nextar accused, frustration creeping into his synthetic voice. I'm reading your design, Jiho replied, dodging behind a support pillar as energy blasts scorched the air around him. Your creators built you to be the perfect assassin, but they had to make choices. Speed versus durability, firepower versus mobility. Every choice creates vulnerabilities. Jiho emerged from cover, holding something he had torn from the damaged wall, a piece of the station's internal structure heavy and sharp-edged. Not much of a weapon by galactic standards, but in human hands, anything could become dangerous. Nextar's weapons tracked toward him, but Jiho was already throwing the improvised projectile, not at Nextar, but at the ceiling above him. The heavy metal struck the emergency lighting array with devastating effect. Sparks rained down, and several of the fixtures broke free, swinging on damaged cables. The room's illumination became chaotic, with moving shadows and intermittent darkness. Clever, Nextar admitted. But my optical systems can compensate for changing light conditions. I know, Jiho said from somewhere in the shifting shadows. But compensation takes processing power, and while your computers are handling that... He struck from directly above. Somehow, Jiho had reached the ceiling, using the damaged fixtures and support beams to position himself in the one direction Nexitar's weapons couldn't immediately track. He dropped onto the assassin's back, his full weight driving them both toward the floor. Nexitar's energy shields absorbed most of the impact, but they weren't designed to handle someone physically grappling with their projector. Jiho's hands found the shield generator's cooling vents and tore them free, causing the protective barrier to overload and shut down. Impossible, Nextar repeated, spinning rapidly to throw the human off. No organic being can move like that. But Jiho had already disengaged, rolling away as Nextar's mechanical arms swung through empty air. You keep saying that word, Jiho observed, breathing slightly harder, but still eerily calm. I don't think it means what you think it means. For the first time, Nextar's threat assessment programs registered a possibility they weren't designed to handle: mission failure. Not through superior firepower or numbers, but through being outthought by something that shouldn't have been capable of complex tactical reasoning. What are you? Nexitar demanded, his weapons systems recalibrating for close combat. Jiho considered the questions seriously. Around them, the classroom was a wreck of destroyed furniture and scorched walls. His classmates huddled behind whatever cover they could find, watching their gentle study partner systematically dismantle one of the galaxy's most feared killers. I'm a human who grew up on Earth, he said finally. That means I'm the descendant of beings who survived ice ages, predators, plagues, and each other. We learned to work together, but we never forgot how to fight alone. We chose civilization, but we kept the skills that got us there. Nextar's weapons arms spread wide for a final, overwhelming attack. Most importantly, Jiho added, his expression shifting to something that made even the mechanical killer hesitate. I'm someone whose friends you just threatened. The last exchange was brief and decisive. Nextar unleashed everything his systems could deliver, a coordinated barrage designed to saturate the entire space around his target. When the energy discharge faded and the smoke cleared, Nextar stood alone in the center of the destroyed classroom. A moment. He believed he had won. Then he realized his targeting computers had lost track of the human entirely. Behind you, said a quiet voice. Nextar spun, but it was too late. Jiho had used the assassin's own attack as cover, positioning himself in the brief blind spot created by energy discharge. His hands closed on Nextar's primary optical sensor and twisted. The mechanical killer's vision went dark, just as Jiho's. Other hand found the manual shutdown switch that every cybernetic enhancement was required to have by galactic law. Sleep well, Jiho said gently, as Nextar's systems powered down and the assassin collapsed. The classroom fell silent except for the hum of damaged electronics and the quiet sobs of traumatized students. Jiho stood over the deactivated assassin, his clothes torn and face smudged with smoke, but otherwise unharmed. Slowly, he turned to face his classmates, and they saw something that would change how they understood humans forever. The same person, who had patiently helped them with their homework, had just defeated 5 professional killers without breaking a sweat. And he was smiling. The silence in the destroyed classroom stretched for long moments. Emergency lighting flickered across the wreckage of overturned desks and scorched walls. Smoke from damaged electronics drifted through the air, creating shifting patterns in the dim light. Jiho stood over Nexitar's deactivated form, his breathing gradually returning to normal. The smile on his face wasn't the expression of someone who had just won a violent confrontation. It was the same gentle expression his classmates had seen countless times when he helped them understand difficult concepts in their studies. "Is everyone okay?" he asked, his voice carrying the same quiet concern it always had. The question broke the spell of shocked silence. Velthari was the first to respond, her crystalline form chiming softly as she tried to process what she had witnessed. How did you—" she began, then stopped, unable to find words. Jiho moved carefully through the debris, checking on each of his classmates. He knelt beside Minho, who was still shielding Lyra in the corner where they had taken cover. "Are either of you hurt?" he asked gently. Minho stared at him with wide eyes. "You saved our lives." "We saved each other," Jiho corrected. "You protected Lyra when they first came in. That was brave." "Brave?" Minho's voice cracked. "I was terrified. I couldn't even move properly." "Courage isn't the absence of fear," Jiho said, helping him to his feet. "It's choosing to do the right thing despite being afraid. Your people understand that better than most." Lyra emerged from behind Minho, her pale blue skin even paler than usual. "They were going to kill me because of who my father is." "No," Jiho said firmly. "They were going to kill you because someone paid them to. Your father's political enemies made that choice. You did nothing wrong." Professor Kellamore had finally found his voice. "Jiho, I need to understand what just happened here. According to your academic records, you have no military training, no combat enhancement, no specialized education in tactics or warfare." Jiho turned to his professor, and for a moment the others saw something ancient and sad in his expression. "Earth doesn't require special training for what you just witnessed, Professor. It requires survival. But the way you moved, the things you knew about their tactics. I told you, I studied. When humanity first joined the galactic community, we lost people. Good people who trusted that civilization meant the same thing to everyone that it meant to us." Jiho's voice carried a weight that seemed older than his 19 years. "We learned to be more careful about who we sent out here." Korvac shifted his massive reptilian bulk, his people's understanding of predator behavior helping him grasp what the others couldn't. "You knew this was possible. You prepared for it." "I prepared for many possibilities," Jiho confirmed. "Humans don't like unpleasant surprises." The sound of approaching footsteps echoed from the corridor. Station security was finally arriving, their heavy boots and equipment clearly audible. Jiho moved quickly to the unconscious assassins, checking their restraints and ensuring their weapons were safely disabled. "When security gets here, they're going to have questions," he said to the group. "The truth is simple. The Shadow Collective breached Academy security to kidnap Lyra. They were stopped. Everything else is details." "Details?" Velthari's musical voice rose in pitch. "You defeated 5 professional assassins with your bare hands. That's not details, that's impossible." "It's Tuesday," Jiho replied calmly. "And I'm a human from Earth. We don't really do impossible." Security forces entered the classroom with weapons drawn, led by Commander Soo-Young Lee, the station's head of security. She was human herself, older than Jiho, with the bearing of someone who had seen real combat. Her eyes took in the scene quickly. 5 incapacitated assassins, a classroom full of traumatized students, and 1 unharmed human standing calmly in the center of the destruction. "Report," she commanded. "Shadow Collective Infiltration Team," Jiho said simply. "Primary target was Lyra Thalvar. They've been neutralized." Commander Lee studied the scene more carefully, her experienced gaze noting details the students had missed. The precise way the assassins had been disabled, the tactical efficiency of their positioning, the complete absence of unnecessary violence despite the overwhelming destruction. "You did this alone?" she asked. "I had help," Jiho replied, glancing at his classmates. Minho protected the primary target. Professor Kellamore maintained order and communication with security. Everyone did their part. Commander Lee approached Nextar's deactivated form and whistled softly. Do you know who this is, student? Nextar of the Shadow Collective. Estimated 43 successful assassination missions across 7 sectors. Cybernetic enhancement. Package worth approximately 12 million galactic credits. Wanted by 14 different governments. And you shut him down with manual controls. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective. Commander Lee turned to address the other students. I need statements from all of you about what happened here. But first, medical teams need to check everyone for injuries. As security medics began examining the students, Velthari approached Jiho hesitantly. Her crystalline form still reflected her emotional state, but curiosity was beginning to replace fear. I don't understand, she said quietly. How can you be the same person who helped me with respiratory system diagrams last week? Jiho considered the question seriously. Did I help you understand the material? Yes, of course. You were so patient, explaining everything until I got it right. And did I threaten you or make you uncomfortable? No, never. You were kind. Then I'm exactly the same person, Jiho said simply. The capacity for violence doesn't eliminate the capacity for kindness. They can exist in the same individual. But which one is real? Velthari pressed. Both, Jiho replied. That's what makes us human. Professor Kellamore had been listening to this exchange while giving his own statement to security. When the immediate interviews were finished, he approached Jiho with an expression of scholarly curiosity mixed with new wariness. I've been teaching xenobiology for 30 years, he said. I thought I understood human psychology and capabilities. Clearly I was wrong. You understood correctly, Jiho assured him. Most humans you've encountered were operating within the bounds of civilization. They chose to limit themselves to socially acceptable behaviors. That doesn't mean the other capabilities disappeared. So every human is capable of what you just did? Every human is capable of extraordinary things when circumstances require it. Some are better at violence, others at healing, others at creating art or solving complex problems. We're adaptable. Commander Lee rejoined their conversation as security teams finished processing the crime scene. The Shadow Collective ship has been captured. We found detailed plans for the infiltration, including psychological profiles of potential resistance. She paused, studying Jiho with professional interest. They had no profile for you at all. You weren't on their threat assessment list. I'm a xenobiology student, Jiho said with a slight smile. Why would I be? Because humans don't send random civilians into deep space, Commander Lee replied. Earth's foreign ministry is more careful than that. They certainly don't send teenagers to prestigious academies without extensive background preparation. Study how different species adapt to survive in challenging environments, Jiho said. It's good preparation for a galaxy that doesn't always understand what humans are capable of. Over the following days, word of the incident spread throughout the Academy and beyond. The Shadow Collective had been considered nearly invincible, their reputation based on decades of successful operations. The fact that they had been defeated by a single human student sent shockwaves through the galactic criminal community. But for Jiho's classmates, the impact was more personal and profound. Velthari found herself studying human history with new interest, trying to understand how a species could develop such contradictions. Mox began asking questions about Earth's ecosystems, fascinated by the idea that an environment could be so hostile it shaped intelligence itself. Professor Kellamore restructured his entire curriculum, adding sections on survival adaptation and the psychology of species that developed under extreme pressure. The galaxy had been thinking about humans incorrectly for decades, and academic understanding needed to catch up. Most importantly, the fear was gone. Not replaced by comfort, humans were still dangerous, possibly more dangerous than anyone had realized. But the fear was gone because they understood now that the danger came with choice. Humans chose to be gentle. They chose to help others learn difficult subjects. They chose to build rather than destroy. But they also chose to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. And that choice, backed by the capability to enforce it, made them something the galaxy had never encountered before. Not monsters trying to be civilized, but civilized beings who had never forgotten how to be monsters when necessary. 3 weeks later, Jiho was back in his usual seat, patiently explaining the intricacies of symbiotic relationships to Velthari. His gentle manner and quiet voice were exactly the same as they had always been. The only difference was that now, when other species looked at humans, they understood what they were really seeing. Apex predators who had chosen to be teachers. And that was the most terrifying thing of all.